the moderator for this opening ceremony. Our chief guest is here. And before he makes his remarks and relaunches the new website, I'll ask another person from the UN bodies, UNIDO, Dr. Wilberforce Omutanyi Wanyanga, to come and make his remarks in 2 minutes. Dr. Wanyanga.
The chief guest, the Director of Medical Services, the Registrar, Pharmacy and Poisons Board, the board members, distinguished pharmacists, distinguished workers in the pharmacy sector, ladies and gentlemen. UNIDO is part of the UN family with a focus on industrialization for sustainable future and development. The Vision 2030 Secretariat, as well as the private sector, the Chambers of Commerce, and other organizations. The country program support for these areas, and we're working in partnership with them, has the following key priority areas for Kenya industrialization process. One is the enterprise competitiveness for inclusive growth and job creation. Number two is the renewable energy for productive uses and environmental management, and market access for locally produced products, especially value addition in the agro sector and now in the pharmaceutical sector.
And KenTrade was set up to implement and operationalize the Kenya TradeNet system in order to integrate various government agencies such as PPB. The Kenya TradeNet system is basically a trade facilitation tool that enables parties involved in international trade to submit regulatory import and export related documentation and to lodge this documentation through a single platform. It is therefore an ICT-based solution which reduces duplication of work and enhances compliance through elimination of loopholes and enhances transparency in the supply chain. Today, we have over 60,000 importers relying on Kenya TradeNet system for faster clearance. The Kenya TradeNet system is a key initiative of the Vision 2030 flagship project under the economic pillar.
Now, it is time for the chief guest to give his remarks. But before he does that, I'd like to say that he's the chair of the board, he's the director of medical services, and I would like all board members that are here maybe to stand and introduce you so that people know that we have a board. On the extreme left is Abdi Jama. I think he's the only board member who's doing the second round. Next to my extreme left is Dr. Alfred Biriji. I said he's from Hopak, Hospital Pharmacists Association of Kenya. Biriji works at KNH. And then next is from academia, Dr. Edith Wakori. One of the oldest, I think it was the second class of pharmacy. Yeah. a classmate to Professor Kibwage. Felix, if you are in, Felix Odhiambo, I think that group. And then next is fellow Dr. Roger Satebe. You know him so well. Yeah. So those are the board members. They are the ones who make the decisions. You can have a seat. And then we give a hard clap to the chair of the board, who is also the director of medical services, as he comes forward to give his keynote remarks and officially open this workshop and also relaunch the Pharmacy and Poisons Board website. Welcome, Dr. Kyogo.
Thank you. Thank you very much, our Registrar of the Pharmacy and the Poisons Board in the acting capacity, the representative from the UN, the UNIDO, Dr. Anyanga, and the board members who are in attendance, the pharmaceutical firms, those in the production, the distribution, in the retail, the distinguished practitioners, pharmacists, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. The Pharmaceutical Regulatory Compliance Conference, which is the first of its kind in this country, a very strategic conference that is a result of a challenge that I placed to the board when we inaugurated the board. And I did tell the board that I need to see situations where this board is able to have engagement forums, is able to organize conferences that are able to share best practices, that is able to inform policies in this country. And I'm glad that the board and the secretariat was able to do this. The board was only inaugurated. The board was only inaugurated 3 months ago, and they're able to do this and organize this particular event with that record time of 3 months. And I think we need to applaud them for this. Because as a chair and the director of medical services, I did realize there's a need for me to have a board that really answers the problems of Kenyans, that really engages the stakeholders and really realizes the role the stakeholders in this country, in the pharmaceutical sector, really plays towards the overall health service delivery in this country and the health of the Kenyan citizens as a whole. And therefore, I think as we move forward, we want to indicate that everybody is invited on board this cargo, this train, because we have to move together. But if we realize that you are burdened on our way, as we move on, we are going to offload you, and then we move on. But we want to have everybody on board and ensure that at least we have a pharmaceutical sector that is not only responsive, but is also very efficient, and it's able to address all those challenges that we have had in the previous past. I told the board members in my first meeting with them, the first thing I want to see is the fact that I want to see the image of the board being redeemed. And I want information to be made available to the public, to the stakeholders, because it's the only way of sharing. If you share information, if you are able to work together, and you are going to have a common goal, you're going to make sure things do happen in this country. Therefore, I told the board, we have to make sure we invest heavily on communication, public awareness, because I would want to see whatever is being done by the board, whatever is being done by the public sector, being communicated to the people of this country. They need to know. They need to have information, because information is power, and they need to make decisions on that regard. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to take this opportunity to welcome you to this very important occasion, which the pharmaceutical sector considers very important as far as partnership is concerned. To us, this is the very first comprehensive stakeholder conference that reflects the importance of pharmacy in today's health sector, that's spanning both the business and the clinical aspects of pharmacy. Ladies and gentlemen, just allow me to thank you for accepting to join us for this very important ceremony, despite your very busy schedule, especially those who are in the industry. We take note that the board was inaugurated a few months ago, and I am glad to that it has remained focused to be able to bring order and sanity in the pharmaceutical sector. As you are aware, the Pharmacy and Poisons Act, Cap 244, the laws of Kenya, gives the board a very heavy responsibility indeed, that of regulating the practice of pharmacy and the manufacture and trade in the drugs and poisons. This indeed is a very heavy responsibility, and the board cannot do it alone. We need the stakeholders. This gentleman and a lady, there is another lady who is also not there. Maybe Dr. Sio did not maybe mention her. There are just very few people, but they cannot make it alone. And that's why they are just representing the sector. But we need to have everybody on board. In fact, I am recommending that this kind of conference to be taking place annually. We have it on an annual basis so that we are able to come and engage and to be able to interact and to be able to share best practices and formulate recommendations that will be able to influence the policies in this country. As I mentioned earlier on, many of Kenyans are not aware about this, and the reasons why I need to see more of us investing in communication, in public awareness. I would want to see more things appearing for the people. I would want to see more of our colleagues, whether in the pharmaceutical industry or whether from the board or whether from where, appearing even in the media, and to be able to talk about what is it that we would want to see in the pharmaceutical sector for us to be able to move forward. But I think more importantly, the board is able to regulate the professional practice of pharmacy in the trading in the institutions and to ensure that the quality, safety, and efficacy of all medical substance, whether it's conventional, complementary products, dietary supplements, and medical devices and vaccines, and veterinary and herbal and non-animal, and to be able to take care of, to license the import and exports of all medical substances in the advertisement and the promotion of all medical substances in the country. And I think this is one area where the board has not done very well. And as long as then I'm going to be the chairman of the board, we will ensure that this is going to be done. Further, ladies and gentlemen, there are designated ports of entry that are manned by the board staff where one is allowed to either import or export medicines through. These premises, of course, where these medicines are being sold or are also regulated by the board, and all of them must at all times be under the management, the control of the board, registered and approved personnel. These premises have to be inspected before they are approved and must all get annual approval from the board. But I want to tell the board, sometimes I pretend I'm a layman. I usually go, I usually go to those outlets and I pretend that I actually know nothing. And I would ask people, hey, is this chemist licensed? Is this chemist, are you registered? You know, I just ask, you know, and surprisingly you'll find that things are not working very well. So there is need for us to really improve on that aspect. Above all, the online services have increased the level of transparency, traceability of documents, and accountability, thus making it easy to track and implement international standards. We want to remind all our customers that the safest pharmacies are accredited by the board, and the most trusted and respected means for the public to distinguish between legitimate and illegitimate drug sellers is to use the health safety code, which is displayed in all registered pharmacies. And that is what I've been checking in most of the time. Not that I want to buy any product, but I just want to play part of the supervision, although Dr. Sioi does not know this. I just want to thank all the stakeholders and the general public for the patience and support towards realization of the Vision 2030 for the pharmaceutical industry. And as health providers, let us engage and let us harness resources and work together to secure our borders, our people, and our nation from global threats. And I want just to say that, ladies and gentlemen, the stakeholders, you have a board that is functional. You have a board that is active. You have a board that is committed to ensure that there is going to be efficiency in the pharmaceutical sector. And you have a board that is ready to engage. You have a board that is going to hear your inputs in how to improve the pharmaceutical sector. And above all, you have a board that is action-oriented. You have no reason for you not to trust this board. You have no reason not to support this board. You have no reason not to engage this board. I think this is powerful enough for you to now to start relying on this board which is here for purposes of ensuring that we have a working, a responsive pharmaceutical health sector. Ladies and gentlemen, it is therefore my singular honor and pleasure to declare this conference officially opened. Thank you very much, and God bless you. So it's not that the board did not have a website. We had a website which has been existing since 2006. This is just it's an upgraded website, and I think this website has key features. One, it is very simple and it's very easy to access, and everything actually is accessible through the home page. I'm told so. There's a blogging feature, okay, which is very interactive, and it's also automated retention register. So you can see when I talked of those characteristics of the board, that is it, isn't it? That is it. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome on the board, and let us move in this. Then I'm being reminded that there is a button that I have to touch. Hope I'm not going to touch the wrong one. All right. Okay.
So at your own leisure now.
Therefore, I can now launch that upgraded website. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
So Sanofi is our leading healthcare provider that engages in research, development, manufacturing, and also marketing of healthcare products. We do partner with healthcare providers to facilitate access of health through a wide range of innovative medicines. Sanofi has a strong presence in Kenya, in Africa, and also in the whole world. We are based in more than 100 countries with a workforce of over 100,000. and it's among the companies that is very active in launches. Between 2015 and to 2020, we expect 6 major launches, which actually cover different therapeutic areas: diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, and also dermatitis. We are a research-based company. We have 4 major research hubs in Asia, France, Germany, and North America, with more than 16,000 employees. We do invest significantly in research. We also partner with other players in the industry in development of different drugs. Now, when it comes to manufacturing, we have a very big number of industries which are based all over the world, 87 in total, with almost 40,000 employees. And we do manufacture biologics, which is very complex in terms of products, pharmaceutical products. We also do manufacture pills and also delivery devices, medical devices.
Our first presenter for this session, which is pre-market regulatory requirements for medical products, it is none other than Dr. Peter Ikamati Mbwiri. Peter Mbwiri holds a PhD from the University of Aston in health sciences. He has worked for PPB from 2005. Dr. Mwangi holds an MBA from Strathmore University and a BPharm from the University of Nairobi. He works for Bayer East Africa as the Regulatory Affairs and Quality Assurance and the company pharmacist. He also has a history of working in the manufacturing industry as in charge of quality control. Dr. Mercy holds an MBA and a BPharm from the University of Nairobi. She works for Beckton Dickinson East Africa as a Regulatory Affairs Manager. And she has been a serving executive committee member of CAPI since 2015. Dr. Konje holds an MBA and a BPharm. She works for GSK, Consumer Healthcare, for Africa Regulatory Compliance position. She also has a history of working in manufacturing.
My name is Budavika Sochula of Saina, Kenya. There's this issue of borderline. It has always been saying borderline, but we don't know what is this borderline, because borderline, and you are using that to a human being, it cannot be borderline. They must be specific. What is this borderline? And what are the users of this borderline? Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Fabrice from Incaba Biotech. So I represent a company that is mainly into the life science industry. My question is mainly towards the fact that we as a company used to be regulated by KMLTTB, which has now been scrapped off. But now my issue is, how does PPB regulates what used to be regulated by KMLTTB? Is there some sort of guidelines that we need to start following on, or is everything going to change? What is the way forward on when it comes to that?
I'm directing my question to Dr. Konje. You talked about service charter. Is it for the regulator or for the industry? Thank you.
Thank you. Now we can first address the issues. I think we can start with the last one because it's the easiest.
Yeah, it can be easy but also complex. When I spoke of service charter, I meant the regulator having a transparent service charter and adhering to the service charter. A lot has changed. You know, now we have gone digital. So really we cannot apply the same service charter. Service charter is something that keeps improving. And when an institution comes up with a service charter, there is also involvement of the stakeholders. So I think what we are echoing is Pharmacy and Poisons Board should have a transparent service charter, but also in consultation with the stakeholders.
Thank you. I think the next question I can try to answer before I give to my colleague on the pre-registration analysis versus post-market surveillance. The science of pre-registration analysis assumes that the sample that you brought is exactly the same consistent sample that will continue being brought in the market thereafter. And we know otherwise. Since I know this product must be tested, I might take a bit of more time while working on that particular batch, so that the regulator, whether you try to analyze, or some people have been known in the world, I'm not saying it happens here, where I can get your product, package in my facility, and give you to test. It will still come as a positive test or a good product. However, after that, whatever. So if you to count the risk or on risk base, if you are to ask me, I'll just read your dossier, accept the science in the dossier, then tell you the consignment as it comes. I'll grab the samples randomly and test, because the cost of testing remains constant. At PPB in the last 1 year, we've got about 1,200 applications. Imagine each of those samples being tested, each at a cost of 100,000. If that amount was used for post-market surveillance, the picture would be much more improved. But anyway, let me bring the issue of borderline product to Dr. Mbwiri. Maybe he can shed some light on why do we call them borderline.
Okay, thank you. Yes, it's a bit confusing. Currently, we do not have any guidelines on some of the areas, that is the food supplements and borderline products. But to what my industry colleague was talking about as borderline, ethanol is not a borderline product. But the problem is we still also do not have any guidelines on control of some of these materials. Ethanol would be regarded as a starting material for manufacture. Okay? So we do not have, these are some of the gaps that we have to fill in. We need to develop guidelines on the registration of starting materials, including also the excipients for the finished pharmaceutical product. Ethanol would be used as a solvent for some of the coating material. So it would either be used as a starting material for the manufacture of the active pharmaceutical ingredient as a solvent, or it can also be used for the dissolution of the coating material. So we need to look at the development of the guidelines. As some of the previous speakers have said, is that the problem was overlapping regulation or laws, but now the health bill that has been assented into law, that was in June this year, has recognized one regulator, and that will be the KFTA. The KFTA bill, I think, has gone through the third reading in Parliament, so it's almost going through to assent. So we should not be having such issue again. Okay. To talk about the service charter, as Konja said, we know PPB has a service charter, but the problem has been capacity. The human resource, we do not have enough personnel. That is the main thing. So even if you have a service charter and you don't have people to work on that, you cannot achieve anything much. As you know, the drug registration or Directorate of Product Evaluation and Registration is the rate limiting step. You've got 8 technical staff. One of them is the director, so you don't expect really that person will be doing administrative work. So we would be talking about 7 technical staff, and we've got 9 departments, as you can see, for the scope of the products being evaluated. So you have 7 technical people for 9 departments. So that's why there is clogging of the system. So, but that one is being addressed because more staff are being hired. Thank you.
Thank you, Mbwiri. And I can also add a bit that on that note is not that the 7 staff are strictly the ones who carry out all the evaluations. We have trained all the workforce at PPB, including the regional inspectors. When there are issues or dossiers to be evaluated, we pull everyone. So, but we are just talking of the constant staff at the directorate. So don't be worried that it's only 7 people waiting to do everything. We have an adequate pool, but we need more hands. Thank you.
If I may just add on borderline products. For example, my colleague there who is talking about alcohol is probably talking about maybe alcohol for preparing the skin for theater, maybe other than as a starting, as a raw material, in which case he's wondering whether now it's a medical device or it's a medicine. And for sure we do need those borderline guidelines. If you research the international borderline guidelines, you realize that finally, as he's saying, there is nothing that ends up being borderline. The guidelines are to help you to identify whether it will finally be a medicine or a medical device. And it's finally about whether you are making a medical claim. Are you going to say maybe the alcohol is reducing the microbial load so that you are not having infection? Now you are talking about medical claim. Or are you simply disinfecting maybe the ground or something, or the surgical equipment? So just to enhance that yes, finally I agree with him, there is nothing that will end up being borderline. So we do need those guidelines to help us identify those so-called borderline, whether they will finally be a medicine or a medical device.
I just wanted to add something else a little bit on pre-market analysis. Pre-registration analysis of the product. I think if you look at the current scenario, there is actually a compelling argument to move away from what we have, because in the end, you have a one-time event rather than integrating it through the whole life cycle of the product. So in a sense, it removes the active, and I use the word active, responsibility on the owner of the product, because it's a realistic chance that once the product had a nice sample and analyzed, is a realistic chance in its lifetime may not be analyzed again. But if you have something in place which by probability the product can be analyzed every other month depending on the post-marketing surveillance protocol, then it puts active responsibility on the owner of the product to make sure that everything that is in the market meets requirements, because something that doesn't meet requirements, I can imagine, also comes with consequences from the regulator. So when you do this, it is somehow a shared responsibility between the regulator and the owners of the product. Right now, of course, there's a responsibility on the product, but I don't think it is, I would say, active. It's more passive responsibility.
Okay, thank you, John. Then we take the next batch of 4 questions, please.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Somane Ismail, and I'm from Pharmaceutical Healthcare. I have 2 questions. One is, we are moving to the online registration or the digital system. And I wanted to know, in terms of promise of reduction in the registration period, what is the promise? Will there be a reduction in the time it now takes to register a product? I think the promise previously has been 6 months, but it's, you know very well, it has never been 6 months. So what is it going to be now? My next question is, I didn't see any reference to the site inspection. I'm not sure whether I was a bit asleep or I missed that bit. But, and I wanted to know, every 3-year inspection, has that been benchmarked with any other country? Is it going to continue to be every 3 years? Is it going to increase or something like that? Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Anis Rahimtullah from Camp Pharmacy. I just wanted to get some clarification on how the integration for regulation of medical devices between Pharmacy Persons Board and KEBS is going to operate. Who has the final say? Is it Pharmacy and Persons Board or KEBS on the quality of a product when you're applying for the registration? Thank you.
My name is Dr. Bernadette. I work with Quintiles IMS. It's a clinical research organization. My question is to PPB, Dr. Ngwiri. You talked about the online platform. And I want to congratulate you for that. It's made it much easier for us to do our submissions. However, we know that it's not fully operational. And what has been happening is that we have dual processes where we are still doing the manual submissions and also the online submission. And we know also that the online submission platform sometimes only allows you to do the initial submission, and subsequent communication from PPB and also back to PPB is still manual. So I was wondering when we can expect to have this fully operational. I know you've discussed about having few technical staff, but is this still being worked on, and when can we expect to just be having one process and have the whole thing operational? Thank you.
Yeah, one more question.
Good morning. My name is Dorothy from Kendo Enterprises Limited. Apparently, my question has already been mentioned by my colleague here from CAM Pharmacy, and to emphasize that on importation of medical devices, what has happened so far, we are thankful because a great job has been done. But the problem that we are facing is how to merge the regulatory authority and the KEBS, because recently there was a newsletter that came out in terms of PVOC, and now there's kind of a contradiction on where do we stand. And when you look at it, sometimes during importation with our clearing agent, it becomes very frustrating. So we'd like the regulatory authority to liaise with KEBS so that we can get clear guidelines on how to continue. Thank you.
Thank you. And as we start to answer the question, I think I can touch on one. On the online platform versus manual platform for application at PPB. I can assure you that right now as we speak today, system for drug registration new, it's purely online, resubmission, variations and notifications. Because of the backlog that had been with the products that had been brought manually. That's why for new products, you have to give us a few months. We first clear with what had been brought manually before we go to the online new products. For notifications and variations and resubmissions, most of you here will, or a few of you from last week, will testify that you've started getting your letters online. Query letters and notification and variation letters have started coming out. Variation started from yesterday. Resubmission started beginning of last week. A few of you have got the letters. Now the systems are working perfectly. Maybe I can also invite Dr. Wasike to answer the first question that was asked about GMP before I come back to the panel. Are we remaining at 3 years? Have we benchmarked? And why the 3 years?
Thank you, Dr. Karaoke. Dr. Sumen did not clarify if the 3 years is too long or too short. So I don't know which way to answer. Is it too long or too short? We have discussed this even at ESC harmonization. Even my colleague from TFDA is here. Is it 2 years? 2 years is too short. With the capacity we have, 5 years is too long, because GMP is CGMP, current good manufacturing practice, because I can walk into a factory today and tomorrow when I walk in it's a totally different thing. So we discussed back and forth, and we actually looked at different authorities, what are the validity of the certificate or the compliance, and we settled on 3 years being the most reasonable period. And not to lose hope that also Pharmacy and Poisons Board is in the process of developing desk review guidelines and specifics for where, if you've been inspected several times, then we'll do desk review, or where if you're coming from stringent regulatory authority, then we're going to look at desk review. So those guidelines are going to be circulated to the stakeholders for comments in the near future. Thank you.
To tackle further the online platform, as my colleague has said, the system is operation on the new application submission. Is also operation on resubmission, submission and evaluation, and for notification variation, submission, and evaluation. And also for the listing, all the medical devices is fully online. So that is the submission and evaluation. To talk about, the other colleague and talked about back-to-back, the fully integrated system, the online platform, we're still looking at the design because we want to have, when you do your variation or notification, it should be able to apply directly, update the retention system. So you do not need again to go manual doing the retention work. So that cuts short some of the issues that, some of the delays, so it improves efficiency. Then the other module that is remaining is we're looking at product information module. For that will be back-to-back with the new application module, such that once you do the variation will not only be updating the retention system module, it will also be updating the product information module. So once you make changes, it will be fully automated. Our head of ICT and his team, they're also working on communication. So we'll be cutting off the manual communication. We'll be printing, like today for the retention system, you print your certificates online. They have a QR code. With the new system also, we'll be getting communication, query questions directly to your email, the official email that you've given. Yeah? Then you can go back to the system, respond. It will be a continuous cycle like that, so there will be no manual. You do not need to come to PPB for letters anymore. That is once we're done with, because apart from the new applications, we have some pending manual applications that we have to work on up to end of the year or January thereabout. Then we move now to evaluation of the new applications that have been submitted online. We're sure everyone knows that KEBS is the standards body and PPB is the regulator, so there will be that separation. PPB will be taking control of the medical devices. I'll give my colleague, Dr. Toroitich, to give some more insight because we've been working with the KEBS on what has been reached so far, including the importation of the medical devices.
Yes, we had a meeting with Kenya Bureau of Standards, and we developed a framework of how we're going to control the quality of the medical devices that are coming into the country. We had several meetings with the Kenya Bureau of Standards, and we are working together with them. And the concern was especially for medical devices that are coming into the country and they have Kenyan standard. They have to comply with the requirements that have been developed by Kenya Bureau of Standards. So we issued a circular, and that circular is effective as from September this year, where all medical devices that are going to come to the country, even the borderline products, must comply with the requirements requirements set by Kenya Bureau of Standards. We are collaborating together, but we are still the ones who are in charge of the regulation of medical devices in the country. I think that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Dr. Toroitich. For now, members, I want to inform you that some of the issues that are arising have not been presented. Some of these issues, there are presentations on them. So more answers will be coming as we move on. And now I want to invite, let's give a clap to our presenters here for having us.
So I'm standing here on behalf of East African Community Partner States, and particularly the lead country in medicine evaluation and registration. Just to give an overview, a small talk on pre-regulatory requirements in the EHC harmonization program. As you may be aware, this program started way back in 2012. And the mandate is driven or is obtained from the partner states drug act or policies that are in place. We don't have a regional body to regulate medicine, so we don't have a regional act or policy or legal framework for regulating medicines. There are countries in EAC that still do not have national medicine regulatory authorities, but medicine regulation is handled under the departments or section in the Ministry of Health. So if we may ask ourselves, what are the objectives of medical product registration? With regard to human medical products is the protection of consumers against effective, unsafe, and ineffective products. And there are agencies within the EAC that are regulating veterinary products. Now is to also protect the animals, but in doing so, you also protect the users or the handlers, the consumers of animal products, and the environment. So the assignment or the scheduling of dossiers is on first in, first out basis. So whoever comes first will be assessed first. And the timeline for review is 3 months. You remember Dr. Mburi talked about having a joint assessment quarterly. So every 3 months, we have a joint assessment where we review these products. I talked on internal assessment procedure. We have abridged, where we abbreviate the assessment based on the information or regulatory status of these applications from stringent regulatory authorities.
Asante sana ndugu Daudi kwa yale umetueleza. One thing that you have to understand from this harmonization program, if you look at our registration procedure in Kenya and the EAC, you can see we have removed the pre-registration requirement at the EAC level. So these things are coming home slowly, and we hope in the next not so long we'll have fully adopted. And again, as he has said, the best take-home message, because I'm also part of this program, is capacity building and trust building among the member states. If the Tanzanians today can give me a report of a dossier they have evaluated, I have no basis to sit and question their work. So we hope in the next few years we'll have the mutual recognition. Our last speaker for this morning is Dr. Wairimu. She holds an MBA and a BPharm. She works for Roche as the Drug Regulatory Affairs Head for East Africa region with 6 years experience. Karibu, Dr. Wairimu.
So today I'm going to talk about the industry experience. Thank you, David, for your presentation on the EAC harmonization process. And I will be talking about what it feels like as industry to be part of that process. So because we are a group of varied individuals, I thought I would speak a little bit about regulation. So the pharma industry is the second highest regulated industry after the airline industry. And we all know because medicines kill people. The first step, the regulation is always the first step towards patients accessing medicines in any given market. The other thing is that this process involves a rigorous document review for entry. And it's important to acknowledge that the Pharmacy and Poisons Board is the official bearer of this office in this country. And David did not mention, but EAC recently became an official observer of the EU European Medicines Agency, which is a very huge achievement for our region. So I think that deserves a round of applause for EAC. So what is the overview? David has done a very good job as to telling us how they do it. So they invited the expression of interest from the industry. Then now they go through a joint assessment, and then you get questions within specific timelines. And once you get an approval, you are supposed to be notified within 3 months of the approval of your response. And each of the countries can issue technical support into the group. Our experience was unique in that we were a pilot group. So which means we were able to collaborate with some of the health authorities that were supporting the EAC for this process. So we are able to work with WHO, we are able to work with the Swiss Medic, and many other partners who came to us for questions, for support, and also for guidance.
Thank you, Dr. Wairimu, for sharing your experience on EAC matters and joint evaluation, so you can, it's an encouragement to the other members or the other manufacturers that EAC route, it is more efficient, it is a better route to follow, because in one sitting, your product can get market authorization in 5 countries, now around 6 with Southern Sudan. So again, Wairimu gets her umeme, 1, 2, 3.
Good afternoon, everyone. I wish to welcome you to session number 3, which is on safety and quality monitoring of medical products and health technologies in Kenya.
The subject of my brief introduction is to talk about how to overcome increasing health costs with quality and affordable medicine. It is an interesting subject, isn't it? And it's interesting of all of us. When I started to make this brief presentation, I wish to start with something we read in recent articles, which led me to think about. It was said that high cost of medical care in Kenya is partly due to the high cost of medication. The cost of drugs can make up about half of an average of 45% of patients in hospital bills. It's a lot, 45, yes? But how much is it? So I asking myself, look at the most expensive market in the world. Medication cost is the highest in USA, and healthcare cost is also the highest in USA. We know that.
Dr. Endon Abao has a MSc in Medical Statistics, University of Nairobi. He has MSc Clinical Trials, and he is also a pharmacist. And he works at Pharmacy and Poisons Board, MIPV Clinical Trials Division. I have honor of introducing one Dr. Kusu Dida, who is a Principal Technical Advisor in Management Sciences for Health. Her background, she's a pharmacist. She has done clinical pharmacy. She is a specialist of public health. She has worked in public sector. She has worked in private sector. She has many hats. Dr. Enoch Omonge, who is a lecturer at the University of Nairobi, Department of Clinical Medicine and Therapeutics, Clinical Pharmacology Unit. And for hospital experience, the presentation will be done by Dr. Dorothy Ayak. She is an Order Bachelor of Pharmacy from University of Nairobi and Masters of Pharmacy, Pharmacoepidemiology and Pharmacovigilance from University of Nairobi. She is currently working and coordinating pharmacovigilance activities since 2012 at Kenyatta National Hospital. Dr. Menge has been a practicing pharmacist for the last 25 years. He possesses a Bachelor of Pharmacy from Nairobi University, Masters in Pharmacology and Toxicology from University of Nairobi, and he is currently the Chief Pharmacist and Deputy Director Pharmaceutical Services at Kenyatta National Hospital. So I would request the presenters to come, and of course we had requested you to pass the questions. If they are there, then we can be able to answer them.
First of all, in my own opinion,
pharmacovigilance, the most important thing today, which should be happening in Pharmacy and Poison Board. But of all the presentations I listened, the only pharmacovigilance activity which seems to have been done is the one which is donor-funded for the 3 donor-funded diseases. So what budgetary, or does the board has a budgetary allocation for pharmacovigilance, and the other one is post-market surveillance, especially in lab testing? Because we only know whether the board is taking something important based on the budgetary allocation. And if you don't have those figures, your board members here should answer for you.
Christabel said that the submissions for PV are less than 1% in Africa. And the question is, does the system have, or is there a system for incentives for these healthcare providers to report more? And if there are they comparable to what is currently present in the countries that have higher numbers of PV reporting?
So the first question, which was asking if we have any budget allocation to carry out post-market surveillance for other medicines. If you scan through the presentation, the time was out. We've, apart from the donor-funded program, that is the anti-HIV, malaria, TB, so far we've done for antibiotics, we've done for antihypertensives and antidiabetics, and we are finalizing on the report that we should be sharing soon. We've done also on on reproductive health products, and this year also we are planning. So annually we pick one. So first we are doing as baseline, then based on the studies it will inform us, because we also look at the ones that had complaints. What informed us doing the one for antibiotic is because most of the complaints we are getting from the field were related to antibiotic use.
My question is to Dr. Yak. Thank you for your presentation. It seems like you're a very good practice at KNH. My question is, knowledge when shared has value. So do you share these kind of initiatives or practices with other referral hospitals or in other forums, maybe as professionals? I don't know, it's a challenge, or you can, my concern is this should be shared, and we can help also all the facilities.
We share in terms of when we have forums like the Hospital Pharmacists Association of Kenya annual symposium, we share our data information in such forum. We also have the social platforms among the other pharmacovigilance personnel, tell them what we are doing. Then now we share in that you can adopt the same practice in your facility, because we appreciate the course is new. So now we are telling that I've done this and this seems to be working, and we are sharing the tools in that way. And also when we have meetings with the board, we share with the other colleagues, this is what we have a session, what are you doing and what can somebody else borrow from you?
Okay, my question is to Dr. Bao. I think this question was asked this morning by a representative from Quintals, I think. So for clinical trial submissions, we do an online submission, then we do a paper submission. I think for initial submission, you need 4 copies. For amendments, we do 2, and for any other update. So the question is, when are we going to, are there plans to transition fully to the online system? And when do you think this is going to happen? Because it's a little bit cumbersome doing the paper thing, and it's double work.
Thank you, Riziki. Yes, we are looking at moving to fully automated system. But if you can remember my presentation, I said that we use a lot of experts in reviewing some of these protocols. That is where the problem is. They prefer hard copies. I've been trying to push them towards soft copy, but they still say, some of them, they're from the older years, so they prefer looking at the documents and making their own comments there. But I'm looking forward to moving fully to the online system. The system is around about maybe 5 years old now, and there are more inputs that you want to put in. Actually, we're already in the process. We're going to upgrade it to much more simpler system to use. I understand some of the protocols are like 1,000 pages big. So if I tell you to bring me 4 copies, it becomes a bit hard. But we are looking at moving to the fully automated. I'm getting to convince them that it can still be done, because they're also very busy people. The system allows them to even review the protocols wherever they are. You don't have to be seated in an office marking that, but we'll get there. Hopefully, maybe within the next 1 year or so. Yes. I take the opportunity to also answer a question that was sent earlier, whether we also need to get approvals for clinical trials involving medical devices. Yes, you need to do that. We give you approval for that. Then after that, you go to our import department. For medicines, you do not pay any import duty. There is no that 0.075% that you usually pay for normal medicines. For clinical trials, medicines, they don't pay for that fee. On medical devices, I'll need to confirm with my colleague, Dr. Toroitich. I'm not seeing them here, but I'll give you the information. Thank you.
I'll also answer a question that was given to me. It says that in a hospital as big as KNH, who is responsible for allocating a pharmacist to a clinical trial? It suggested, is it the PI or the chief pharmacist? I think you can guess the answer to that. But it's not as difficult as it looks, because every clinical trial has got an area of focus. And when you look at the deployment within the hospital, there's already a pharmacist with that area of focus. Let's say, for example, it's diabetes or obstetrics and gynecology or oncology. There's already a pharmacist who has a focus in that area. Ultimately, the office of the chief pharmacist is responsible for that clinical trial, and therefore it's not very difficult for me to know then who will be the lead pharmacist in it. It is the pharmacist who is responsible for the area where the clinical trial is happening.
Oh, I have a question, and this is to Professor Mange, the presentation that you had. One of the concerns about with pharmacovigilance is with regards to self-medication, over-the-counter prescription drugs. As a consumer, my question is, how would I report an ADR for, say, an OTC drug that I'm taking? Or if it's, say, a prescription that I take on a continuous basis that does not necessarily need a physician prescription. So, for instance, I know I'm on XYZ meds, I go take this, and I think to one of the earlier presentations about the formulation across maybe different brands. How would I report that to ADR? Is the pharmacy that I go to, do I have the forms to do that? Or I think part of and I know this is a multifaceted question, with technology advancements, I'm sure there's going to be an electronic system. Is there a number I can call, for instance? Because I do see that in other parts of the world. There's a toll-free number, or there's a number you can call with an ADR. Where are we going with consumer reporting of ADRs, I think is my question.
I'm not Dr. Mange, but I think because I had mentioned it in my presentation. So one of the challenges and one of the things that PPB has noticed is that when pharmacovigilance was launched, it was more skewed towards the healthcare providers, but we now appreciate the fact that consumers also need to report. So we've started initiatives of bringing consumers on board. We have a PR department that has been keen on helping us do this. So far we've done a few television advertisements, just sensitizing the people on how to recognize maybe adverse drug reactions and suspect poor quality medicines. We've done that on Nation and Citizen, but we appreciate Nation and KTN. But again, we know this does not reach masses. We've had voice radios of about now 6 vernacular languages. We've tried tweeting about it on our Facebook page. But then currently what we are doing is coming up with an app so that for the ones who are able to electronically report, they'll be able to have a form that they'll report online when they log into our website. It will also be on phone, where we'll be able to have, like you can, there you do those polls, you send and you ask a question and then you answer and all that. But currently we also have a phone number that in case you have an adverse drug reaction, you can actually call and someone will take you through. And based on these advertisements that we've done on Twitter and Facebook, we actually currently have patients even walking to the board and come and report. The other thing, we are working out with the public PR department. In this coming financial year that has just started, we want to do more media campaigns, and we're looking at also bringing the media on board. Because one of the challenges that sometimes we've also had is whereby maybe communicate, but the information is passed out differently. Because we all appreciate that also for the media, what sells will count more. So we are planning to have maybe short training for the health reporters so that they can be advocates in passing this information out to the patients so that they are able to do more of reporting and monitoring how they're using their medication.
Just to add to what Christabel has said, currently we are also having a project we are doing together with Nairobi University, and I'm seeing the PI is seated behind there, Dr. Busire. So we're looking at developing a simpler version of the yellow form that the general population can use to send us the information. Remember, the mobile phone coverage in this country, as I usually say, is more than the toilet access. It is more than almost 100%. So we are looking at developing a simpler version of the yellow form and market it a lot for people to use. There's a country I usually quote. If you go to Canada, a country of 36 million, around 32 million people, they receive more than 300,000 reports from the consumers. The moment consumers will start reporting adequately about the quality and the safety of products, then you are sure that your market is being monitored. PPB has less than 200 members of staff. They cannot be everywhere across the 584,000 square kilometers. But the moment that we have the healthcare, the consumers of medicine being able to report, then they can become part of Pharmacy and Poisons Board. So we are in the process, and I hope before maybe around April next year, we'll have something ready. It will be a mobile, yes.
Thank you. I just want to add on to the budget bit and the aspect of consumer reporting. I think maybe if PPB would be able to retrieve the figures and probably share with Dr. Mwaniki. Over the time, there actually been increased investments into pharmacovigilance. The monies that go even into capacity building that is led by the board. There are monies that go to the PMS for some of the drugs that are not traditionally covered by the public health programs, whatever Christabel has talked about. The monies that go into supporting the data management at the board, the staff who are not even there when the system was starting up. I know in the past that may have been collected, but if it's updated, you can see some significant increment in terms of the increase by PPB contribution for PV. That said, it's not sufficient, and if we are board members here, I would lobby, as from the partners' perspective, that would probably need more going into that to be able to actually support that awareness creation, to support, the media campaigns, to support health workers sensitization trainings, because most of the partner-related funds are tied to something. They may be tied to a disease area. They may be tied to a particular thing that is tied to a proposal,
or, their work plans. And also increasingly, you are seeing the funding for this country is basically going down, knowing our status. So if the board could advocate, then we can have that more funding going towards that. And when you look at consumer reporting, I would propose we look at it from a multi-pronged approach, from the mobile to where, looking at the kind of people we have in our country. There are people who have access to, the mobile apps, USSD codes in the mobile, people who can walk into facilities the health workers need to know, people who can call directly to the board, people who can even access this online and using the simple form be able to notify. Then at the PPB, we need the capacity to reach out to those people because that has been a disconnect even in the earlier days. And I know Dr. Omonge, like when the HIV project program was maturing and we were having a lot of ADRs to first lines, we still did not have data. People are not reporting, like you heard of my case study. People are not telling physicians. People are not aware, and you keep working with your, with your adverse drug reactions, swollen legs, all that, but you are not telling anybody. The country needs to know about all this and need to know how to go about it. So resources, the board, PPB, towards this is key. And then maybe long-term sustainability is to see how that can be part of maybe the registration, the retention, whatever, something sustainable. So, thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll hand it over to Dr. Kimathi to close this session. We're now at about 5:15. He will ask you to leave.
Thank you. We have come to the close of this session and we wish to thank our presenters very much, and I think we need to clap for them for the good work done. So in a nutshell, Merck, we are the original Merck. We say that in this part of the world, because there is an organization also known as MSD, or Merck Sharp and Dohme, and in the US as well. So the story goes back in 1668 when Merck started, and then in 1887 when the two cousins decided to expropriate the business in the US. And the Merck Sharp and Dohme that we know in this part of the world actually became owned the naming mark in the US and in Canada. And the rest of the world we are known as Merck. Merck next year, 2018, and hopefully we will invite you. We will be 350 years old. That makes us the world's oldest pharma and chemical company. We are really grateful for your partnership from PPB, from all the organizations that have been working with us through the journey, including when we came together to fight schistosomiasis with WHO, counterfeit medication with the PPB and other organizations. So it's some of these initiatives as Merck organization, we are really proud to partner and to continue to run the business along the continent as well as globally, not only generating revenue, but also giving back to the society, which is a cornerstone for ourselves. And with our products, both in research, product, and money can buy.
I'd like to pose a question to the people in this room. As pharmacy practitioners, what is pharmacy practice? Is it the same now as it was in 1957? Are we evolving as pharmacists or pharmacy practitioners? What is our role in the changing space, in the profession, in healthcare space? Are we making, where we are we making a difference in our space? And who is our anchor tenant? It's a patient. The malls say our anchor tenant is Nakumat, it's Chandarana. So we have an anchor tenant who is a patient. What are we doing to improve the life of that patient as pharmacists or pharmacy practitioners where we are? Are we still the most trusted profession? Are we? Yeah. If we genuinely answer ourselves from deep inside, are we still the most trusted profession? Dr. Ocheng is a pharmacist. He holds an MBA in strategic management. He also has a master's in pharmaceutical science. He has 16 years of pharmaceutical regulations.
Previously he has headed the Inspectorate Directorate, Business Support Directorate, and currently he heads the Pharmacy and Practice and Regulation of Training at Pharmacy and Poisons Board. He's a visionary and thought business leader within the SME, retail, and community healthcare sectors. He's the founder of Halton's Pharmacy, the largest chain of pharmacies in East Africa with over 10 years community health experience. He has served as a member of the National Governing Council of PSK. He was instrumental in relaunching Green Cross. He is passionate and purposeful about building teams and businesses in the SME sector using models that are sustainable, commercially viable, and that have a positive impact on the internal and external business community. He has been a chairman for KPA for 10 years. He's one of the founders of MEDS. He was the first pharmaceutical technologist to be employed by a university. And he has been practicing in urban areas, now he's in rural. Dr. Irene Weru is an oncology pharmacist with a working experience of 14 years. She's a graduate from Nairobi University, Bachelor of Pharmacy degree in 2001, with a clinical pharmacy from the University of Nairobi in 2009. Dr. Weru is also a Deputy Chief Pharmacist and Secretary to the Medicines and Therapeutic Committee at KNH and Honorary Lecturer at the University of Nairobi School of Pharmacy. Dr. Weru's current research area are on access to cancer chemotherapy. She's passionate about safe and rational use of medicine and especially anti-cancer medicines. He has a master's degree in pharmacology, toxicology from the University of Nairobi. He's currently working as a chief pharmacist at the Kenyatta National Hospital and a honorary lecturer of toxicology at the University of Nairobi School of Pharmacy. He is the current chair of the HOPAC and a member of the National Governing Council of the Pharmaceutical Society of Kenya. And I've had a pleasure of working with him in PSK when I was active in PSK. She has over 10 years experience working in the pharmaceutical manufacturing industry, both in quality assurance and in production. She is currently the regional pharmacist for an international humanitarian organization, ICRC, covering Anglophone Africa. To give us a presentation on FBO-based experience is Dr. Jane Masiga. She's a pharmacist with a master's in clinical pharmacy from Aberdeen University, Scotland. She has an MBA from University of Nairobi. She has worked in retail pharmacy for 6 years. And from there on, she's been in MEDS, FBO-based organization from 1991 as head of operations, mission for essential drugs and supplies, MEDS.
We in Kenya Pharmaceutical Association, we appreciate this invite by Pharmacy and Poisons Board. It has been a long time. There has been a lapse between Pharmacy and Poisons Board and Kenya Pharmaceutical Association. So we have been pulling in different directions, and that has been it has not actually augured well for our profession. At one time, we actually have been calling each other names. And so when you invited us and we visited you in your offices, I think we had a truce, and now we can work together. So as an association, we have few concerns, both as an association and also as professionals. There has been a lot of mushrooming of pharmacies, and I like to call them, as an experienced member of pharmacy, I call them, some are legal, some are semi-legal, and I'll explain that, and some are completely illegal. With the legal is where the practitioner actually is in charge of actually the profession. In the premises the person is actually practicing. The semi-legal is when we as practitioners, both pharmacists and pharmaceutical technologists, we actually lend our certificates. The illegal, of course, is the quacks, yeah, whom, as Dr. Asike has just asked, as professionals can easily crowd out actually the quacks. We have done it in a small town where I practice. When we started, there were 5 quacks. When we joined, 3 of us joined in actually that setup. The quacks, all of them closed. Today, we are the only ones practicing there. So we can, yeah, we can. Our other concern is where do we all source our medicine? We in Kenya Pharmaceutical Association would like the board actually to concentrate very much on that area of in the drug chain, and I think we can easily overcome that one. In licensing, we have no complaints. The board has done well in that. That one, I say the board has done well. I've gone through many years and I have seen. Yeah. So we would like you to continue like that. And when you see us as professionals, don't see us as your enemies. See us as your friends. Thank you very much. I hope another time, when we have another time, I will share my experience, not the Kenya Pharmaceutical Association. Thank you very much.
So what I've picked from his presentation is we have a lot to do as Pharmacy and Poisons Board. We need to, this mushrooming of pharmaceuticals, sourcing of medicines. Yeah, in this coming financial year, our target is to the wholesalers because we are the ones supplying quacks. But then I was asking, are we the ones to be trusted? Because I remember some time back, we were also targeting wholesalers. We go and get the receipts whom we have sold, we sold to the quacks, and then you come for the disciplinary committee to face the disciplinary committee. So we give, the committee gives you 3 months to be reporting whom you have sold to. Believe me not, the record was so clean that they were selling to only qualified or registered pharmacies. But when you go deep, they were hiding records. Because now they are not going to give out invoices to the quacks. They're not going to give out any records, so we are not able to follow up. So they're coming for disciplinary. We go as inspectors to check for the records. We're getting clean records. You're actually selling, you're not selling to quacks.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Nelly Kimani. I got an opportunity to speak to Kibet. He's from PPB, the legal department. I found out apparently there's a lot of issues going on with pharmacy practice. We've become very litigious, which I was very embarrassed to hear. We're such a small community of people as professionals, and to hear that now the lawyers are finding us a big market for them. It's an eye-opener, and we need to get worried. We should not be fighting amongst ourselves. Thank you, and a pleasure to meet you, Kibet.
Good morning, everyone. So we talked about the presentation that was done by Orlando from Cosmos. We were talking about trying to reduce the cost of treatment or drugs in Kenya, given that the cost of treatment was actually 45%, and we saw that we were the worst performing in the world. We were talking about why do we not trust local manufacturers, given that we are now trying to go in the direction of generics. So for me, that was coming from the insurance industry. we obviously want to try and reduce the cost of treatment, cost of drugs for our members. And I think the direction of generic prescription and local manufacturing is something that we really need to look into. And we found that that was quite pertinent and relevant to both of us. So that's what we talked about.
Good morning, everyone. I'm called Nyaga, and my question is a bit general, maybe something that has not been discussed by any of the presenters at the front. And the question is on the emerging trends, whereby you find that now these days, patients don't come to the pharmacies with the hard copy prescriptions. They come with what I call image prescriptions. And we know what the law says, what Cap 2 Post 4 says about those hard copy prescriptions. Normally, when you try to explain to the patients the importance of that piece of sheet of paper, they will always tell you that if you are not ready to sell it to them, they can go to the next shop and buy, so you can eat your drugs. That is one question. About quackery, I just want to give a comment. When I qualified from college in 1990, I found people talking about quackery. I found Mr. Mbogu already in practice, and he was talking about quackery. Now I'm 52 years. Having served or having practiced pharmacy for the last 27 years, I'm sure Mr. Mbogu should be approaching 70. And we are still talking about quackery to the extent that it has become rhetoric. The question is, for how long are we going to talk about quackery? We have talked about this subject for so long that it should be considered obsolete. And I want us today to agree that we are going to bury the issue of quackery in a fathomless grave, that hakuna wakati itatokea tena. Hata kama inaendelea kwa sababu ya Pharmacy and Poisons Board. We need Michukis in Pharmacy and Poisons Board. Period. And I've talked with a lot of authority, as you are an authority in this board. We have been taken for granted by Pharmacy and Poisons Board for many, many years, so many decades, talking about a minor issue. Let me tell you, self-regulation will never work in this country. There is no professional body that can self-regulate. We need regulators outside our environment, from the macro environment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Gemini Chief Pharmacist Aga Khan. My question is to the outpatient pharmacies and maybe even some hospital pharmacies where we're issuing drugs without a prescription. If we are all talking about safety, quality, pharmacovigilance, we're talking about a lot of concerns, but if we are not going to honor the fact that prescriptions are medications only, if we're going to issue without prescription, then we're not going to make them safe. So there is something I really wanted to know. If I've done that, I've walked into many pharmacies, I pretend to be a layman, I ask for the most toxic drug and I'm given. Nobody asks me, are you, who prescribed? Do you have anything, any drug interactions, any past medical history, lactation status? I could even go with my baby, nothing. So I just want to know, how are we going to, I understand he's talking about quacks and all that, but that's maybe where our professionalism will stand. We should be, I know it's a lot of money. If I probably was an entrepreneur, I would not be asking this. And yet I know that if an antimicrobial stewardship is going to be down the drain, if prescriptions are not honored.
Yeah, my name is Somana Ismail. I have two questions. One is on the Universities Act 2012. I realized Ochieng referred to that a few times, but the amendment was done last year, and I think the bill was assented to on the 23rd of December 2016 for implementation on the 13th of January 2017. So in order to introduce the role of PPB in the University Act in terms of formation of Faculty of Pharmacy, I think we may have lost an opportunity. So I don't know when we will have that opportunity in the future. My second question is, in quite a number of countries, and I have worked in a few, medical representatives are pharmacists and probably pharmacists where they have those two professions. But in Kenya, you know that that's not the case. Is there anyone thinking of that, really, in terms of ensuring that the person who is detailing to a doctor to discuss a product is somebody who actually understands very clearly what he's talking about? Thank you.
Maybe, I'm not sure, when a patient presents you with a copy of the prescription, where do they say the original is? Because at the end of the day, I think as a pharmacist, you also need to know either we are saying that patients are only being given copies and the original is being kept, or the original must be somewhere. And you know, by law, you are required to keep prescriptions for a certain duration of time. So it's up to you. I think you need to be able to enforce this. We cannot blame patients. We can only educate them. But we need to know what is right and insist on doing what is right. And we've taken note that maybe as a strategy, we need to educate patients. And if we insist that it has to be that way, then of course they'll know that you cannot be given medication unless you have an original prescription. In the context of online pharmacies, I think then we may have to come up with a way of ensuring that only genuine prescriptions can be filled, and after verification by a pharmacist or a pharmaceutical technologist, as the case may be, and of course that should be traceable. Quackery, I don't want to say that I have the solution to what you're saying, but we have heard you. What basically you are saying is that you need a Michuki, and the buck stops with PPB. We don't want to read from the Book of Lamentations and say that the pharmacists and the pharmtechs are the ones who are failing us, but that is the truth. There is no quack without the tools of trade. And I don't remember if there is any quack who is a wholesale dealer. If you know one, you tell us, because that will be very easy to deal with them. And if there's anybody who is running a wholesale establishment and is not a pharmacist, then there must be a pharmacist behind that registration of that establishment. So as much as the buck stops with PPB, and you heard in my presentation, I said that people go to great lengths to try and hide the data, what they are selling to these unregistered people. And as PPB, we have taken some steps. We have enabled you. You can verify the registration status of your customers, because even before the link that we're saying will now be available on the new PPB website for you to have real-time information on who is registered and who is not registered, you have a right to demand that somebody presents you with their registration certificate. And even without calling PPB, if you have a smartphone, you can verify if that license is genuine or not. So really what we are saying here, we have empowered distributors to a good extent so that there should be no reason whatsoever to supply quacks. But what I'm saying, we have heard you. We need to sit and re-strategize and see how we can solve this problem. I think what I also want to urge is that each of us must take responsibility. We know there's competition, but we need healthy competition. There's a question on the Universities Act. Basically, what you're asking is that we missed an opportunity. Of course, in the wisdom of Parliament, they have the monopoly of making laws. Somebody presented a case, Parliament debated, and they decided to make that law, giving the responsibility to the Commission for Universities Education as the sole body that can accredit universities and programs. Now, as I mentioned, the only option we have now is to collaborate, because again, institutions, I think they had this feeling that there are too many regulatory bodies. We are not talking about PPB alone. And all these regulatory bodies are always visiting to do inspection and to accredit programs. So what remains is collaboration to work with the COE so that we give them standards, what we need. If somebody is to train as a pharmacist, what do we need? The curriculum, what is the minimum? In terms of facilities, what do we need? And then they can give us a role to play in the whole of that process. Others, as at now, and I think the legal officer from PPB has a presentation in the afternoon, you realize that regulatory bodies came together, those ones in health, and they went to court to challenge implementation of that particular amendment which was done last year. I don't think, as we are talking, that court process is over. It should be ongoing.
Medical representatives.
Medical representatives, I agree with you. We have guidelines which was developed as early as 2006 saying who qualifies to be a medical representative. Of course, we see people from the industry trying to engage people who are not qualified. Most of those people, actually, they don't even get them permits. I know that from what we have observed informally, we see more pharmaceutical technologists being engaged as med reps. And I think that is being driven by costs. People, I think, want to pay less, and maybe these people are able to accept less. With regards to other people who are not pharmacists and not pharmaceutical technologists, we maybe have to review the guidelines. I think time is up for review. And then, of course, we engage stakeholders. You tell us who you want to do this job. But I can assure you that I don't think there is a possibility in all these countries, given the numbers of pharmacists and pharmtechs that we have, that we may make it exclusive for this cadre of people. If we have to do that, if that's what the stakeholders feel, fine, we can put it onto paper and implement. Before I pass the mic, yesterday Dr. Menge was presenting and he asked a few questions on hospital pharmacies. I wanted to take this opportunity to answer. Management of hospital pharmacy, of course, should be by a pharmacist. It depends on the level. As you saw, the thinking in public service, each hospital should have qualified people. We, at the moment, do not register hospitals in the public sector. They're just part of the master facility list of what are the government facilities that exist. In terms of design and the norms in terms of cadre of HR, responsibilities, I think this can be defined. And I mentioned we are going to define good pharmacy practice. In terms, we'll make guidelines for that and rules, because I realize what is lacking is detailed rules. If you look at other jurisdictions, they have very detailed rules on everything that people do, so that there's no doubt as to what is expected of you. I think that is what has been lacking in our setup. Inspection, yes, all facilities where medicines are sold or distributed or stored, whatever the case may be, should actually be inspected. And then just to mention, the Ministry of Health has something called the Kenya Quality Model for Health. This is more of about standards. and accreditation. That is being managed from Mafia House. And if you look at it, what is there is standards for purposes of accreditation of institutions, and I'm not sure where it is right now. I think there's a time it was undergoing review. So that should also serve as a guide. But ultimately what we need is to develop the good pharmacy practice guidelines where we define all the standards in terms of design, what you need to keep there, who needs to work there, and all those details. And I think it should be work in progress. So this is the first quarter of the year. Probably by the end of the next quarter, we should have something to present to stakeholders. Thank you.
In that breakdown, can you answer the outpatient question? Outpatient hospital issuing pharmacy with the pharmaceuticals or medicine without prescription from Aga Khan?
I think we are dealing with just a scenario of actually the cities and the urban areas. In the rural areas, it does not happen like that. The prescriptions actually do not come. They come in book forms or in papers where the patient is supposed to go with that one as a reference. Yeah. So when we are talking about prescription, unless we have, we develop our good pharmacy practice and actually make it go down to the counties and to the health centers, I think the prescriptions are not there. In fact, if a drug inspector or pharmacy inspector comes to the pharmacy, I don't see what they actually look for. Because the majority of Kenyans do not know about a prescription. They know that I go to the hospital with a book, it is written, I go to the pharmacy, the pharmacist, pharmaceutical reads it and gives me back. So that's the scenario we are in actually in the rural areas.
So I think the question is issuing medicine without a prescription, and you know it's that will be able to tell us backwards even if something ever happened to the patient. You know, we can track backwards and see recourse. What do we do about it? Yeah? So it's an issue of professionalism,
and I think the practice guidelines and the practice standards. The issue of professionalism is not just unique to pharmacists. I mean, we have in building. If I ask here how many of us have built and asked how many engaged an architect, how many engaged a quantity surveyor, how many engaged a licensed engineer, but these are the people who are just keep saying they know how to build a building. Then the next thing you hear, a building has come down. Yeah, so it's really also a big answer lies in a unified communication strategy. Where we are, even the public can feel us and say there's actually a group of people called pharmacists, and they're out for our good. And the things that they'll ask you for is a prescription, so that before you leave the doctor, you actually say it's my right to get a prescription. So I think we can win it if we take that approach. Of course, the other approach is just using of technology, embracing the EHS model, where electronic health records are stored in soft, so that if you even want to know a product from the manufacturer to the distributor to the client, you can actually track within that system. And people are using systems like that, and I believe that's how even meds is able to track and say this batch number came from this person, and such things. Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Jen, your question?
My question is whether we share the information with PPB, the information which we find in the practice. We have two types of information. We have information of failed products, because when we analyze the products, the failed products, we return them to the distributor. And if it's an inspection of a site, we need to see what is the reason, why we are going to do these things. The reason is to pre-qualify our suppliers and pre-qualify our products. So when we go there and we find that the manufacturer doesn't have good manufacturing practices, we do not pre-qualify that supplier. If we find the product has failed, we return it and will not procure it for med supply chain. I need to say that we have a very good working relationship with Pharmacy and Poisons Board, but we have not, and we are collaborating in quite a number of things, but we have not reached, we discussed the issue of sharing information on what we get from our supply chain where our pre-qualification process is concerned. One of the weaknesses we have is our quality assurance system, the procedures, which guarantees confidentiality to the suppliers and manufacturers as we go, because we are going there to build a win-win relationship between meds and our manufacturers, build them so that they can supply us better. So that information is confidential, but if we reached a relationship with Pharmacy and Poisons Board that they can also sign a confidentiality clause with meds, and we agree that when we share this information, it's in confidentiality, not to be said that meds said, but they do their own investigation on what we have shared and use that information in whatever way they want, then it will leave us with our relationships with the suppliers, and we'll be able to share that information. So I think if you look at the last slide which I put, we are really calling out for collaboration between the players, PPB, within the region, and everybody who is doing these inspections or for one way or the other, including the humanitarian organizations, the one who presented before me. If we can reach a collaboration where we can share that information, I think we'll take the region further. Thank you.
Is there a listing available to consumers potentially of approved medications, a price listing that gives you an idea of what the originator drug would be, what a generic should cost, give or take? I mean, there's markups, I'm sure, within pharmacies. So you can use that as a guide when you go in, what can you expect a drug to cost, and can do a comparison between what an originator, an approved generic should be versus what could possibly be a fake drug. And then within that, assuming these pharmacies, the people, obviously the moral and ethical authority resides with the pharmacists. When you buy these drugs, I'm sure you also do a comparison. What is a generic? What is an approved generic? An originator drug as well. And, something that seems cheaper than the others begs a question. What is this an approved, is this a working, is it a good product? Because that should be a question the pharmacist should ask. But if you're also employed, there may be questions where you're not the supplier. Maybe it's, somebody who's supplying the drug. Do you have a way of reporting anonymously if you have concerns, with what's being supplied? So just generally, I think, that's the question, or a couple questions I have.
My name is James Mokoro, Rekit Penkiza. My question borrows some leaf from Dr. Wanyanga's presentation yesterday about the roadmap for GMP. I also borrow some information from FKPM on the number of members they have for local manufacturers, together with Dr. Cheng's presentation that had 35 or 34 registered manufacturers. Then my question is, FKPM has 23. You have a record of 35 or 34 for that matter. How do you bring in the other lot, which is not within the 23, to realign with the roadmap for GMP? Are you able to invite them for trainings individually, because then you cannot get them together if they are not together with FKPM? That's my question.
In the same vein of the question we've been asking about expectations of our anchor tenant, mainly to do with cancer and its treatment. It can be very costly. It's a very devastating and aggressive disease. What we may be doing to consider or accommodate better testing, diagnosis, and screening. The treatment is not being implemented in stage 3, stage 4, whereas that can be very critical.
I just wondered if Dr. Cheng can just give us some more data on the pharmacists who are in practice. It went very quickly through that slide, but it was very interesting to see that only 700 and something pharmacists are actually registered. So maybe if you can just expand a little bit on the numbers of pharmacists in practice vis-a-vis public, private, and from those 3,000 or so, how many are active? Just some more info so that just to give a better picture of the pharmacist. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Just a few weeks ago, the Ministry of Health launched the strategic plan for cancer 2017 to 2022, and I believe one of the core things in that document is the issues of early detection and diagnosis, and I think that's the focus area, even in the other documents that the ministry has. So for us as health professionals, we need to advocate for that more, and it's going to be a collective effort, so that instead of thinking about setting up cancer centers that are going to be costly and require so many other regulations, it's better to train our healthcare providers, even from the lowest levels, to identify and therefore be able to diagnose early and do appropriate referrals at an early stage. Yeah.
Thank you. There's one of them which I'll give you to answer, the one on GMP roadmap. I'll start with the last question on data about licenses. What I said, just to refresh, is that the last registered pharmacist is number 3306. And that is the current ones who are being registered. And the data that I was giving was on the number of people who have licenses to practice for this year up to now. That was the 711. What I was saying is that so far those who are in public service have not been applying for practice licenses. Reason being, they were not deemed to be practicing in their private capacity. And of course, within government, there was this allowance called non-practice allowance, which was payable to those who are practicing but in government. Now, from this year, we expect that these people will be able to apply for licenses. So the truth is, many pharmacists are out there working in the public institutions, and they are not captured among the 711 that I was saying had renewed their licenses up to today. So I think that should clarify. So in terms of trends, we're just saying that less and less pharmacists are going for community pharmacy. They're not going for retail. We're seeing people going to hospitals, and also we see them in wholesale. And the number that remains for retail is much, much smaller. So there are opportunities there, as I think Dr. Louis also presented, that we need more pharmacists to repackage themselves and practice in community, because it's not community, it's not just dispensing. So if we look at this practice properly, we can actually have community pharmacists who are practicing at a level that is commensurate with their knowledge and that will add value, so that we don't just let practice of community pharmacy be dispensing of medicine over the counter or distributing medicines through the internet. Now, the next question that I want to tackle is reporting mechanism. If somebody comes across suspected product of suspect quality, yes, there's a mechanism, and I think that was highlighted yesterday by the pharmacovigilance team. Then, in terms of prices, really, I don't think the quality of a product is dependent on the price. You can get a very good quality product, which the price is not very high. And you can also get a counterfeit product, which somebody brings in cheaply, but it doesn't mean that that person is going to sell that product cheaply. So tying prices to quality, I don't think that is the way to go. And I think yesterday, from the industry, somebody presented on cost of medication, cost of treatment, and we saw that he actually demonstrated that cost and quality are not necessarily related. So I think that's one thing we need to reconsider. The question on manufacturers and GMP roadmap, let me give Dr. Wasike to tackle.
Thank you. As you said, Dr. Konja's presentation, FKPM membership was 23, and the total number of pharmaceutical manufacturing is 34. For it even to reach 23, it took the effort of Pharmacy and Poisons Board, especially during this Kenya GMP roadmap, because when we started the project, we realized FKPM was 12, 13, 17 companies, and then the uptake of the GMP roadmap was, of course, it was being called the Wanyanga roadmap. So it took our Pharmacy and Poisons Board to come in and to convince, to sit down with the other players, to convince them, to tell them the importance of Kenya GMP roadmap. It's not about the big companies, it's not the big companies coming to swallow the small companies, but it's about the good of the local manufacturing sector in Kenya. So we got people on board. As we said, we are not going to contact one by one. I mean, I would love to all of them to be FKPM members. Every time I meet the chairman, I ask how many people have joined. So 23 for us is a progress, so we hope that it will be 34 soon. And I think there's a drive to get all those companies in place. Dr. Nyanga thought I'm going to present on Kenya GMP roadmap, but I can take a second to just give you an overview of what Kenya GMP roadmap. This is a project between Kenya Pharmacy and Poisons Board, Ministry of Industrialization, in support by UNIDO, where we did a baseline survey for all our local manufacturers. They were classified, and then a CAPA system was put in place. CAPA is corrective action, preventive action, and where they are trained on the CAPAs, and then the regulators were also trained. And then we started the implementation process, and now we're in the process of implementation. Of course, we have had hitches here and there. We stop, we start, we stop because of the court cases, but I think the project is on course. And because of Kenya GMP roadmap, we've seen companies close up to go and do contract manufacturing because maybe the infrastructure was too old for them to upgrade. It will cost too much for them. We have seen companies improve. We have seen companies that had very bad infrastructure. When you walk in at the moment, you think it's a very low facility. You have seen companies going for greenfield projects, buying land in Kitengela at River to start on the projects. We have seen companies, WHO pre-qualified as late as early as December last year because of this Kenya GMP roadmap. We've seen everybody having interest in Kenya GMP roadmap. Now we are the talk of the town, the country and the world. Actually, we have been called to talk about Kenya GMP roadmap for the East African. We have seen East African also wanting to start ESG GMP roadmap. West Africa countries have also called, WHO in Denmark have also called Kenya to talk about GMP roadmap. So what we are saying is Kenya is on the right track on pharmaceutical manufacturing. Our locally produced products are of good quality, safe and efficacious. As Pharmacy and Poisons Board, we are always striving to monitor them to ensure that they actually meet the standards, and this project is supposed to take 6 years. And if you do not meet the minimum standard, then you have no business being a manufacturer in Kenyan market. And we have seen 3 companies also, companies are under WHO pre-qualification process. There's some inspection beginning of June, so we are waiting for the report. We have 3 companies that are members of PICSES. And for us now to maintain that standard, Pharmacy and Poisons Board has applied to PICSES. PICSES, those ones in Manufacturing Pharmaceutical Inspection Convention Scheme for European. So we have applied to be observers before we become members. So we are told we are coming to be inspected on 29th of October to 2nd of November as Pharmacy and Poisons Board Inspectorate Department to see if we meet the standards for joining PICSES. So there's a lot happening especially for local manufacturing, and it's because of Kenya GMP roadmap that you saw the Minister for Treasury, Mr. Rotich,
zero rating, was it BAT exam? I always confuse the two, HVAC system, and he could actually pronounce HVAC in full. So there's a lot of sensitization in local manufacturing. There's a lot of opportunities because we have 34 companies. They all manufacture the common products, essential products. You see paracetamol, name them, the ones you know, aspirin. But what about oncology products? Penicillin, because you need the dedicated premises for such things. IV fluids, really. We import high quality water all the way from China to here. So why? There's a lot of opportunity for pharma sector to invest in. As Louis said, the investors coming in interested. We have 3 or 4 companies now interested. One wants to set up an oncology plant, biologicals, in somewhere in Voi. We have a company from Bangladesh coming up to set up a 4.2 billion worth of a plant. We have one that we have done groundbreaking somewhere in Narok County. So there's a lot of interest in pharma manufacturing. So let us not be left out. Let us be keen to listen and see what we can do within the pharma sector.
I really want to encourage the board to give us rules, to give us things that are legislatable, that can be put in a form that they're enforceable. A guideline is enforceable by will. I may comply or may not comply. And so there are very many guidelines that you've given us that can be a reference point for the things that we do. But unless you make them rules, they are not enforceable. That was my thought.
Thank you, Dr. Menga. We hear you.
I'll invite my president of because I'm a member of the Pharmaceutical Society of Kenya, therefore he's my president, Paul Mwaniki, is the president of the Pharmaceutical Society of Kenya. He's a pharmacist and is a member of the Kenya Country Coordinating Mechanism Committee on a Global Fund for HIV, TB, and malaria, and is also a director of the investment company of Pharmaceutical Society of Kenya, referred to as PSOK. Dr. Manik, karibu.
Since I only have, I think there are 4 slides, which will only take 1 minute each. So let me just do what the representative of KPA did. He did not put slides. The problem is that as we are in politics, we are not used to presentation. We are used to giving speeches. The rally is going on for Jubilee and CORD. Have you seen presentations? The politicians don't give presentations. But just something related to the slides before I go there, at least I think something which I've just been interacting with members, for the organizers, because this is a compliance conference, they seem to have been noticed that there's a gap, that one of the institutions in charge of compliance, the National Quality Control Lab, was not even making a presentation. But maybe they can even organize their own conference anyway. Yeah, see, they do that. But at least that one, even me, I noticed. The other thing, since also the ministry is here, just something else which is only me who can say, still related to the slides, is that they seemed to be in the recruitment of KEMSA CEO. They seemed it was a position earmarked for someone. So people are saying, so what was the need of telling people to apply? They should just have gone and appointed. So that's another thing. And it's those who applied who are told me to say those. Why were we disturbed to apply while actually someone, it seems, had already been earmarked to be given the post? That's wasting people's time. That's what they are saying. The other thing is that since it's also related to the slide, is that in terms of legislative framework, remember the Pharmaceutical Society of Kenya, and since this is a board function, at least nominates 3 board members to that board. that it's good also to know that those 3 board members, they are the ones who implement most function. Okay, not those 3 among, together with the other board members, they are the ones who implement most of the things we are going to discuss here. So it's also good to take into cognizance that the PSK, just another announcement, elections, is coming. And I've been told most of you don't know. Someone was telling me he had someone saying he's vying for the CEO position. The CEO position at PSK is not an elected position. You need to check on your email to know the positions which are vacant. There are timelines like IBC of the country on what to happen. The positions were declared, I think, 3 weeks ago, and nomination papers were sent. The deadline for submitting those nominations for those ones to vie is 8th of August. I don't know how it's coinciding with the other 8th of August. But that is what is the PSK constitution. Then the other timelines until you vote on from 27th of September to 4th of October. And I land over power on 27th of October. Everything is in the constitution.
Okay, very many pertinent issues he has raised in that short speech, joking as he was. He has raised an issue on the role of NQCL in the new setup. Do we still require NQCL? And what if his NQCL is required, what is his role? He's brought it out jokingly, but we got it.
Mine is really very simple. I would like to sell cancer to you. I think this one institution that most people don't realize that it has really transformed. It's a totally different institution. It's one institution that now I think is playing a very important role as far as the healthcare of the 45 million Kenyans are concerned. We as an institution, what we are good at is to make sure that the necessary commodities actually reach the facilities and reach the Wanjiko. We are actually trying very, very hard to make sure that the 45 million Kenyans actually enjoy good health at a very low cost. The other bit that we do is to establish network of storage, packaging, and distribution to county facilities. The other one is for us to enter into partnership with county governments and other relevant strategic partners. And that I would like to emphasize, that currently we are actually working with nearly all the strategic partners. Like, for example, USA, currently we are handling a project that is worth over 65 billion. You see, that's the confidence they have in this institution.
Let us release informed information to the public so that we are able to educate them instead of scaring them into not using medicines. We are hurting our own brands by giving the wrong information to the public. So we would like PPB to provide a network for importing quality, safe, affordable medicine. In 2015, I think, or 2016 beginning, we had some meetings where stakeholders were invited and guidelines were developed for parallel importation, or input was given. Even if you decide to bribe, you would have to bribe everybody because everyone puts a message. KRA will put a message, everyone will put a message. So it's very difficult to bring in a drug in Kenya that does not have a PPB permit. At KPDA, and I leave you with this, we are just for availing quality, affordable medicines to the patient.
2, 3, fungua.
My name is Dr. Naikuni Obadia. I'm stepping in for Dr. Sioi, who is attending another meeting elsewhere. I would like to acknowledge the presence of Dr. David Soti, the Senior Deputy Director of Medical Services, representing the Principal Secretary, who was to come and give his closing remarks. I also acknowledge the Board of Management who are here for the last 2 days, the CEO of KEMSA, Dr. Wilberforce Wanyanga, UNIDO, who has been supporting us a great deal, and the president, the outgoing president of PSK, or retiring president, I don't know where he has gone out there. Yeah. Mine is to thank all of you, all the stakeholders, especially those who made very powerful presentations here. I believe now you know what the pharmacy board does. You have seen the challenges we also face. We have seen the challenges also you face, and I think we are able to come together and solve these challenges instead of going to court every now and then or to the papers. And I'd have liked to advise the president to advise his members to stop this business of going to courts and to the papers. But he's not here. I believe he has a PA. He can pass the message to him. And let me take this opportunity to invite Dr. Rogers Atebe to make his remarks on behalf of the Board of Management, and thereafter invite the chief guest to make his closing remarks. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to just say one or two things. One, the buck stops with me. What did I say? The buck has stopped somewhere. We cannot pass it around. It has to stop somewhere. So for me, I've offered that the buck will stop with me. So if there is a problem with the pharmaceutical industry, just ask me what has gone wrong. Do you agree? Someone has to take responsibility. And I want, on behalf of everybody, my colleagues, the Secretariat, to take that responsibility. And you know what that means. I want to appreciate that this was a mixed grill conference. There are practice aspects which must be separate from commodity aspects, where we are dealing control of medicines and other healthcare technologies. I want also to thank the conference organizer, Standout Ventures. Why don't we clap for all these guys, man? Radisson Blue Hotel for hosting the conference and providing service excellence. The Secretariat, PPB Secretariat, responsible for day-to-day operations at the PPB, who are also the face and the hands of the PPB. The presenters, sponsors, exhibitors who are hidden somewhere in the next room. Colleague board members, we also appreciate you. CEOs from KEMSA, UNIDO, Dr. Wanyanga, and other colleagues from various areas. Finally, and to whom that we raise our hands, the Almighty God, we thank Him and pray that He may bless those who have good intentions for the pharmaceutical sector.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Atebe, the acting CEO, the board members, the pharmaceutical industry stakeholders in totality. I'm here representing the Principal Secretary, Mr. Julius Korir, who, because of other duties, was unable to be here. So he told me to come and read the remarks closing this. It is a pleasure to be with you today. I want to recognize Acting Registrar on his behalf, Dr. Fred Sioi, the entire pharmaceutical fraternity, the Pharmacy and Poisons Board, the conference organizers, for putting in a lot of hard work to host this conference. It is an important event in the history of Pharmacy and Poisons Board. I would like to thank you very much for the good turnout, all of you, for the function and honoring
the invitation. I am happy to hear that this is the first stakeholders conference in pharmaceutical sector organized by the Pharmacy and Poisons Board to build capacity and ensure compliance by the industry. We are here today because the constitutional commitment of ensuring Kenyans enjoy their right to health is being observed. This conference represents creativity, collaboration, and team effort involving numerous stakeholders inside and outside of government. The Ministry of Health recognizes that all stakeholders need to work together to ensure that quality, safe, efficacious products circulate in the Kenyan market. The Pharmacy and Poisons Board has the sole responsibility to protect the health of the public by regulating the profession of pharmacy, ensuring quality, safety, and efficacy of the medical products. This role can be enhanced if we establish strong linkages and relationships with stakeholders in the spirit of collaboration. The theme of this conference, compliance best practice for the pharma and medical devices industry, is timely, coming at a time when Pharmacy and Poisons Board is increasing its efficiency through re-engineering business process. The board's milestones such as geographic positioning system, mapping of registered premises, health safety code, regulatory human resource information system, and online submission system, among others, are a significant step in strengthening the pharmaceutical processes to improve the health outcomes of the Kenyan population towards the Vision 2030. I am informed that the conference deliberations were centered on a pre-market and post-regulatory requirements used to ensure the efficacy, safety, and quality of medical products in Kenya. In addition, you also informed about the procedures for licensing and good distribution practices of medical products. Lastly, you, together with the board, have made recommendations to the legislative framework used to regulate the pharmaceutical industry in Kenya. In line with the Constitution of Kenya, the ministry recognizes this great opportunity for partnership and collaboration in enhancing the health outcomes of acceptable levels. We appreciate all the partners who have undertaken to partner with Pharmacy and Poisons Board to hold this vital conference to help ensure product safety, quality within a globalized world. On behalf of myself and the entire Ministry of Health, I salute this great profession as you continue with serving the nation with a view to conform to the policy of providing quality healthcare that is acceptable, affordable, and accessible to all Kenyans. It is now my humble duty to declare this conference officially closed. Thank you, and may the Almighty God bless us.
For me, I think the conference met its objective, where members were taught, or those participants who were taught the areas of regulations. It was successfully received by them all. So we addressed those issues that are affecting the pharmaceutical sector very well in this conference. We thank for all those participated, the members that are coming next year and join this successful conference again. This was the first of its kind, and we believe it has achieved its goal.
I've attended the 2 days conference from the beginning, and it's been a fantastic conference. It's a forum which brings us as stakeholders together, the first of its kind, long overdue, and we've been able to share and interact with colleagues, with the Pharmacy and Poisons Board, and we believe the outcomes of this conference will take our profession and the health of the Kenyans very far. We really wish this is something Pharmacy and Poisons Board can do more often maybe annually, but we also hope that they can incorporate other countries in the East African region so that we can enrich the forum. I really appreciate and I'm happy that I attended. Thank you very much.
Maybe one of the highlights that I can give, that I got from the training is that the importance of registering or regulating medical devices, of which I saw that every medical device should be regulated to ensure that the specifications are met and the standard. And maybe something that we can improve in future is maybe we can incorporate bodies like AMEC, who are involved in Medical Engineer Association in Kenya, who will assist in maybe upgrading the specifications of the machines that comes to Kenya, so as to ensure that there is no machine that has got a backward technology that gets into Kenya, and so that we can improve the health sector in a greater way.
This is a wonderful opportunity, I think, that all stakeholders should have been involved in. And indeed, many of us who were invited from different aspects of the industry. The presentations were very informative. In fact, I learned so much, and I would encourage my colleagues from other universities and even from my own university to attend this kind of forum next year. I believe this is one way in which the pharmaceutical industry, and especially the pharmacy profession, can grow and have internal review of itself. So I would encourage us to have such a conference repeated each year, and let's see where this takes us, because I believe it's an opportunity to grow the profession. Thank you very much.